Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, Feiute, my Irish friends. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and my friends. So, today we have an important topic, and I would say I have asked many times that question, you know, and and I will say here, throw the stone who didn't ask this before. So what we need to do when we don't know what to do. Okay, that's the topic today. So thank you guys. As Charlotte says, ladies first.
Hello, my dear friends. It is wonderful to be here again. At least we had a nice conversation as we are in a beautiful room, have a cup of tea or coffee, and talking as a brothers and sisters that we share the same problems in our homes, in our families, everywhere, within ourselves as well. So now, once again, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone in the world, my friends, my brothers and sisters. Uh, Again, we are here. That's it. Thank you.
Me now? Yeah. Hello. Like Elsa said, it's a great pleasure to be here once again after a week. And we pray that God enlighten us and help us and sustain us during this meeting, and also bless each and everyone that's participating with us. I say good evening and good afternoon. Welcome, and it's a real pleasure to be with all of you. So God bless us, one and all, as little Tim used to say. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous, bonsoir, selon où vous vous trouvez sur notre planète. C'est une immense satisfaction d'être nouvellement, encore une fois, avec vous ce soir pour parler de ce sujet donc, qui est lié aux questions existentielles. Voilà. Hello everyone, good morning, good evening to everyone. Happy to be here again with you to exchange some thoughts about all these fundamental questions a human being is asking at certain moment in his life and which are very important.
Okay, so after this introduction, I will play our today's video. It's very short video, and then we keep going our discussion. Okay, let me put my screen here and let go.
By having something we believe in, by creating for ourselves a construct, psychological construct of something that is grander than all of us. And then there's no right or wrong in this case. That is what we believe in. It's a very personal experience. But by having this, by creating this construct of that's something that is much larger than what we are, we can then project a future for ourselves, a situation of improvement, even if it's not something that can be carried out at that very moment. There is a faith that we think of religious faith, and in that sense, it gives us a strength that is not based on technology, for instance. But there is also that faith in humanity, the faith in the professionals of the health area that are going to assist us in that moment of need, in that moment of difficulty. There is also faith in humanity in the sense of the technological advancements that we have at our disposal today to tackle that difficult situation. And I think in that sense, the faith of something that is grander, that is larger than what we are, it can assist us because we can experience or at least we can project a purpose that perhaps the objectivity of the immediatism cannot give to us. The immediatism would be the cure. That would be what anyone who is in a difficult, going through a difficult infirmity would want, would desire. But then you also have the situations where we know it can be a battle that for the moment we don't have a cure for, or that we don't have the necessary tools, medical tools, nursing tools to address it. So the faith would allow us to have resignation, will allow us to get a better understanding of and cope better with that situation. Even though we cannot see in the near future a cure for it, we will live better through that experience. We will not be as miserable, I would put it this way. And I think it has major psychological impacts. And faith here is in the most generic sense of the word possible. It doesn't have to be the religious faith that we would say ritualistic faith, but that feeling, that internal feeling that allow us to devise a better purpose for ourselves.
Okay, so 1 second. Okay, great. So, my friends, I will start today. I could find one, let's say, before we say this, I want to say hello to our friends. I can see here Lea is with us from Sweden, Zeda Snabs, Bruno is asking if there is some physical place in Dublin. Bruno, currently everything is closed in Dublin, so meetings with more than 50 plus people is not allowed yet. I heard some announcements from the government yesterday, but so far there is no date or nothing arranged to return the meetings here in Dublin. Okay, thank you guys, thank you. But I invite you to go to www.isf, which is .ie, which is the website of the Irish Spiritist Federation, and there you can find us on our lives and everything with about it. So I will start this discussion today, and I found a text from the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier, and I did, of course, the message was in Portuguese, and I did a free translation, so for this I apologize, Silvia, beforehand, and I will read for you guys here. So the name of the text is Answers on the Path. Bringing your conscience clear in the duties that life has given you to fulfill, you can and should live your life peacefully without any need to be unhappy. Help others without worrying too much about the problems they present because they want to solve them themselves. Do not fix so intensively on the external aspects of events, but place your inner vision on the facts in progress so that your understanding may clarify your reasoning. Dedicate yourself to your work with all available resources, recognizing that if there is any need to change your attitude, your task will make you feel it without saying any word. If you have experienced any failure in executing your ideas, do not blame these but yourself. Reflect on the best way to carry out readjustments. If you do your job correctly, your clients or beneficiaries will come from far and wide to look for the value of your experience and your competence. In any indecision, value the opinions of friends who talk to you about the matter, but keep the conviction that the decision will always be your own. An attitude of sympathy for others is always an open doors to their help now and in the future. Even in the most distressing hours, try to act with serenity and discernment because we will always reap from everything we have done. The excuse for the faults you have been a victim of is invariably acting on your behalf. When trials and difficulties seem to increase, be patient and optimistic, working and serving in the certainty that God always does the best. So this is chapter 6, and the book is Respostas da Vida, Life's Answers. Saying that, I'm hungry today. I didn't have my dinner yet, so I think I'll go to France to eat a croquet monsieur. And my dear Charles, on chapter 5, item 18 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec brilliantly gave us a lesson about the cross we have to carry on. And I like this passage. There are many situations in life that we consider a difficult tasks, crosses too heavy, because we have difficulty accepting them, family conflicts, prejudice in society. The burden is proportionate to our strength, just as the reward will be according to our resignation and courage. Could you give us some comments about this passage in which Kardec teaches us that don't complain, whatever you have fits to you? That's my simple words about what he said, I simplified it.
Okay, Steven, thank you for the question. Question is really touching to a very difficult and sensible point, which is suffering. So this section 18 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, as you mentioned, is entitled "Blessed are the afflicted," from this famous teaching that Jesus gave 2,000 years ago. So he was seeing the persons afflicted, which are suffering, as he's qualifying them as blessed. So it is something which is really very, very difficult to explain to someone who is really suffering. The person is suffering, seeking for help, for some relief, and you come and tell her, "Oh, you are blessed." So it's really not the easiest way. It's something very difficult to explain to the people. And one author who did very well, Kardec did it quite well in this section, and with the help of the spirits, explaining the causes of the suffering and also the advantages of the suffering. Another author who developed this also wonderfully is Léon Denis, in his book, The Problem of the Being and of the Destiny, and where there are several sections which are dedicated to the pain, to the suffering. And this item 18 that you also asked me to analyze and to comment is a communication from a spirit, which is Lacordaire. Lacordaire was a predicator in a church, if I remember well, in Paris, who gave this communication to a medium which was living in Le Havre in France in 1863. And the title of the message is "To Suffer Well or Badly." So again, it's something very difficult to explain. How can you make someone understand that it is possible to suffer well. Suffering is generally seen as something bad. And everything comes back to a kind of synthesis of the previous lives we have made in this Spiritual Light series, answering to the existential questions. What are we? Where do we come from? Where are we? And where are we going to? And also the other natural laws, some of them very simple, like the law of cause and effect. So it's a basis axioma that every effect must have a cause, and which is used in all the science and everywhere nowadays still. And I will give, as I do usually, very simple example. You take a hammer and let's say without willing, you hit your finger with a hammer. Okay, so this is a cause. What happens next? You are suffering, you have pain in your finger. It's getting, how to say, hematome, some internal bleeding or whatever, and it is painful. Is it or isn't it? So in this case, we suffer, but we know why we suffer. We have the link to the cause, which is direct. But still, let's suppose if you understand this, that hitting your finger with a hammer is leading you to suffer, has an advantage. It has the advantage that the next time you will be careful, more careful, not to hit your finger with a hammer. Okay, so you can see already that behind the suffering there is a big advantage, which is exactly how to say, okay, where does it come from? What can I do to improve it, to reduce the suffering, to fix it, and also to prevent it? And this is a very simple example, but which can teach us, give us a big strength to understand the suffering in our lives. When there is a suffering, you get a motivation to overcome the suffering, to prevent it, to try to alleviate it for you or for your neighbor, or for the beloved one, or whatever. So in certain way, it is stimulating our activity in order to bring improvements, which can be then become very general improvement, useful for a lot of people. Okay, so we can see that when there is a suffering, there is a kind of a challenge. It's a kind of generating some kind of stress that we have to take as positive stress in order to find ways to resolve or to prevent further sufferings. Now, we have seen also the existence of God in previous lives, and the fact that if God exists, if God exists as a first cause of everything which exists in the universe, when we see all this harmony in the universe, for instance, when you look at physical body, we talk about wounding. With the time, it fixes, the pain is going out. When you are bleeding, with the time, it is with the time also it's a cicatrization coming on. There are so many incredible and wonderful mechanisms wherever in the universe that if God exists, he must be, or it must be infinitely perfect. So if God is how to say, letting happening some suffering, it is again for having something positive coming out of it. And this positive things is exactly our personal progress and the progress of humanity. So seeing in this aspect, we can see much better. And then seeing also about the reincarnation, many lives that we also developed in the previous emission, we can also understand with the fact that we do not have always the memory of our past lives, why it can sometimes happen that we suffer in this life the consequences of things that we have done wrong in past lives. Okay, so we do not know why, for instance, some people are born with some physical or mental deficiencies or whatever, when we are reasoning only on one life. But when we reason we are reasoning on several lives, then we can understand that this effect can have a cause from a previous life, and that if everything goes well in this life, in the next life, it will not happen again. Okay, so all this enables us to understand the sufferings. So again, there are two types of sufferings: the ones that we know the causes coming from mistakes we have done ourselves, that we are then trying to prevent it, to avoid, and the other sufferings, which is not a direct consequence of what we have done, at least in this life, the sufferings that we cannot do nothing against it, and then we have to understand by this infinite goodness and mercy of God that this suffering has a meaning for us. It is helping us to go in a certain way. It is helping us to think about it. It is helping us, challenging us to find new ways or new solutions in order to overcome this suffering, in order to find the meaning in it, in order to find also in which way this will help us to progress. So, in other words, you can see that clearly the suffering is something which is challenging, which is stimulating the progress. We can also say that the progress is done in two ways, either by love or by suffering. Okay, so the suffering is not something mandatory for us to progress. We can progress by love, by using our will for this own progress. But what we see is that generally around us, a lot of people, when everything goes well, are really not progressing. They are at the opposite, accommodating, and how to say, stay stationary, not solving the problems, not preparing themselves properly for the next event. Look what happened recently in Louisiana again. It happened exactly, I don't remember, 10 or 15 years ago in a similar way. But we can see that this time it had much less consequences than the last time, exactly because the suffering from the last time teach lessons, and the human being, by using his intelligence, made such to make some dikes or protections or whatever to avoid the bad things who happened 15 years ago to happen again. So clearly, there is the progress is very difficult without the suffering, and the suffering, again, I want like also to repeat that pain is one thing. We cannot avoid the pain. For instance, when we hit our finger, as I told before. But the suffering is then more linked to our way to cope with it. So if we cope negatively with it, we will suffer a lot. But if we cope positively with it, seeing it as something which will help us to progress, then even if we have pain, the suffering is much less. Okay. So all this is showing, because it's a fact. Suffering exists in the world. So it cannot be unfair, because otherwise it would mean that the law of natures and God himself could be unfair, which is a contradiction with this infinite mercy of God. So that's why it's helping us to find a better understanding in our lives, in particularly for these periods of suffering which are more difficult, in order to have the resources to face it, to cope with it, as it was told in the video, in a better way, and consequently to reduce it and to take it as an advantage for the progress. And this is basically what the Spirit is explaining in this item 18 of the section 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, explaining this sentence coming from Jesus, which is saying, blessed are the afflicted. And how to say, it's again something which is very difficult to explain. Some people will reject it, will have a revolt, saying it's totally unfair that they are suffering. But again, that is not the best way to overcome it, to cope with it. And also, it's not in line with this philosophical idea, root idea that if God exists, he must be infinitely good, infinitely just, and infinitely merciful. So I hope I answered to the question, Stevan.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And we have here some comments. Robbie Brown saying, suffering can act as a catalyst for self-awareness, acknowledging and educating ourselves. It's what we do with the opportunity or invitation for inner transformation. We are blessed more than we know. Wise words, my friend. Thank you.
Exactly this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I can see Vin has also some
Yeah.
statements.
I put it here.
Someone dies in a war zone as a child. What benefit in that case? Again, if you are reasoning only on wildlife, you will really not see the benefit, not understand what happens. But if you see it on several life, see that the death is only the soul which gets free from the physical body, and the soul which then will have other opportunity to reincarnate and to continue. If you see this as well as maybe a consequence of something wrong that this spirit, which is at that moment a child, has done in a previous life, you can also better understand the reasons for it and the advantages it can have to help this child or the spirit who was incarnated in this child at that moment to progress.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Charles.
I think one day, just a brief comment. One day, when we decided, the entire humankind of people, decided to do a course about the divine laws or natural laws, we will understand properly about reincarnation and the merciful that God is with around towards us is a wonderful opportunity to reincarnate and rebuild and redo again what we did wrongly in the past. Because in this world, right now, in this existence, there is no victims. Everything is accordingly follow the divine agenda that if we want or not want, that's it. We cannot change the way that the divine laws and the agenda are towards us. We can change the small things, not the big ones. So the child that lost his life or her life in Azar war zone was planned to die, perhaps not in this situation, but as the situation were there and the child was there, so the things cross and come together, and the divine laws accordingly fill the gap, fill everything. Only brief comment.
I think I'd like to say something as well, because of course, when we're going through difficulties to problem and periods of suffering, we don't feel ourselves blessed. We have to recognize that you find it very hard sometimes to cope. But I think one of the things, once we learn why things happen the way they happen, then we can, like Charles said, we can bear it with a little more, with courage and a little more intent to take some good out of whatever we're going through. And this is, I think, is very important. But I think another point that I like to make as well, not everything comes from what we've done in the past. Sometimes when we reincarnate, we ask to go through certain experiences to learn certain things as well. Some people will come and will suffer, but they don't actually need to go through all that suffering, but they ask it to so they can learn some lessons, or they can help the people around them. I think it's very important to understand that things, what the Spiritism teaches us is that it's all part of the experience that we have to go through. Not everything has to be. Mostly it is, I think probably 99%, it is something that we've done not right in the past. But sometimes we ask as well, it doesn't seem possible, but once we are in the spiritual world, we ask for certain experience that we enrich our spirit. So we might not necessarily need to go to that suffering, but we choose to do it. I think it is very important to remember these things as well in Spiritism, that not everything is karma, is punishment. And I think it's good to remember as well, especially when we go into certain difficult things, that God does not punish anyone. There is no punishment in God's. It's lessons that we need to learn, to go through. Most times we ask for it, and if we don't, it's all part of enlightenment of our spirit. God is always merciful. He gives us opportunity to readdress our wrongs. I always find very comforting to think that.
Maybe I would just also, if you allow me, Stevan, add from this message of that or this on the gospel chapter section, say 5 item number 18, because I've seen also in the chat now the call of Bruce helping for help for attendance for several difficulties. And the spirit of Lacordaire is saying, when facing sufferings or obstacles, if you are able to place yourself above the situation by managing to dominate the impulses of impatience, anger, and despair, then you may say to yourself with just satisfaction, I was the stronger. So it's exactly this. And the suffering, again, the pain is unavoidable or hardly avoidable. There are some remedies to reduce the pain. But again, the suffering depends more on our mindset, how we cope with the pain. And the suffering is somehow, I would say, optional. And it's by our will, by having this strength that explained by Lacordaire, that we can cope better and reduce our suffering, even though we are having big pains. And as a personal example, when I think today what was one of the happiest days in my life, it was exactly after the surgery. When you feel the pain, when you have all this apparatus medical blocking you see the thing, one monitoring the heart, the other one monitoring the blood pressure, and then you have also the thing coming into your blood, and you have also the other drains and whatever. So you are completely locked or in your bed. You cannot even turn around, even less standing up, and with all the pains and all these consequences of the anesthesia and so on. And then really lying in the bed like this, looking to the high, evocating the good spirits and God's, I'm here in your hands. Tell me what I should do and I will do it. And really it gave me so big satisfaction that today it's one of the happiest days in my life. So again, this illustrates how we can cope with the suffering. And then, of course, after 2 days or 1 day, then you can stand up, they remove one stuff, then they remove the other stuff. And each time it's a victory, and you see the end of the tunnel coming out of this situation. So again, it's more a question of mindset and how we cope with it.
Yeah. And I see here that Vinny Bones is asking some help. Vinny, I will send your message to the Cardiac Radio team. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are in Europe. We don't know, at least I don't know where you can find this type of help in the US. Okay, but I will send your message to the Kardec Radio team, and someone will contact you. Okay. Okay, so last comment here, Robbie. Suffering is meant to get our attention. What we do with it is reflected through our free will, level of education and experience. That's it. Okay, I ate my croquet monsieur. Now I go to London, South London, to have a cuppa.
Okay, so
Okay.
South London for a cuppa. Yeah, you do need a
Yeah.
cuppa because it's freezing cold.
Yeah. So, my dear Silvia, as we know, thoughts are ideas created in the spirit. Okay, spirit create this idea and transmit to electromagnetic signs, and we say this. And the question here is, what to do to find balance between reason and emotions, and at the same time manage to see alternatives. So it's kind of look one eye in the fish and one eye in the cat, and at the same time try to fry the fish.
Oh dear, yeah. Okay. That's it? Is that the
That's
question?
it. Okay, if you say that's
Okay.
it, fine, great, I'm happy.
Well, no, I mean, just to ask if you had something else. No, I think this is an interesting imagery, actually, piece of imagery is really interesting to have an eye one thing and another so completely different. You have to defend yourself. But I think, in everything that we are discussing today, the question of suffering is interesting that in the in a gospel according to Spiritism, this is coming from the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be consoled. This part of the Beatitudes and Oaths on the Sermon on the Mount. And I find this very, very important because, going to all the explanation that Charles gave before, it's very, very important to see that Jesus was giving us almost like a light that we could follow in relation to what we suffer and why we suffer, because it was in the middle of the consolation of the Sermon on the Mount that he said that. So that's in itself means something that's quite precious, just a point. But going to, I think, first of all, very briefly, we needed to understand what thought is. I mean, from the explanation you gave us already, thought is an electric magnetic force, and is part of our mind that is created by our brain. And as you said, the thought is created by the spirit and is sent out, is a force. I think, by reading André Luiz Emmanuel, especially in Pensamento e Vida, Thought and Life, it's very, very important for us to understand how important our thoughts are, how creative they can be, and how destructive they can be. That's an incredible force there. And this, the important thing is for us to see is that thought is created, is electromagnetic force, and it goes pass through throughout the universe by the cosmic fluid. So it's everything that we think it's created, and it goes into whoever. If we think of someone and that the thought will go to that person. Doesn't matter if they're close to us or if they are in the other side of the world. And this is very important for us to understand, because, sometimes you think about a person, you're doing something, you read or you're watching the telly, doing the washing up or something, and suddenly you start thinking about a person. And 3 minutes later, the phone rings and it's the person on the phone. So you already, even before they were on the phone, you were already receiving their message that they're going to call. And this happens all the time. I think everyone has had experience like that. So I think I wanted to, I made some notes and I'd like to read it because I think I find it important. It's from that book, Thoughts and Pensamento e Vida, Thoughts and Life. And how Emmanuel explains that, you have the mind, which is the mirror of life. And is created from the earth and goes through God. So to the light of, so it is a process that we have to learn. And he also says that we cannot go beyond the environment that we are, the point in which we are in our development, our spiritual development. We cannot, among that, we can create in that circle, we cannot go beyond, but we will eventually. We are growing and we are learning. So he says as well that we are in the stage between the animals and the angels. I mean, already in the middle there. So it's something already, but because of that, we are, in our actions and what we do, we are creating this development for our spirit through our thoughts. And it says also that is a mirror of life, that we find that we live in the breath of the thoughts that we send out and we receive. So this is very, very important for us to think that. And this will create, the Spirit says that, in going, that we aiming to go towards divine glory. And we have this mirror of life that is our thoughts and our conscience. And I think in question 621 in the Spirit's book, that is, this Kardec asked the spirits, where is where the laws of God is written, and he says in your conscience. And I think this is very, very important, because it teaches us that we have to learn how to use our thoughts, because it's magnetic force, it's electric force. It creates things. So when we are thinking something positive about someone, we are sending to that person something that's already created. I think if it's a bit difficult sometimes to understand, because we haven't been trained or to use our minds very well, that when we say something, when we think something, especially if we are within an emotion or something, we can have that we are creating already an image or something. So, like when Charles was explaining about the operation and everything, in that you could already be creating in your thoughts the energy to heal your body, which you can do that too. So the thoughts are in the brain. That is the center of all the waves that where it creates thoughts. And thoughts moves everything. It's throughout the universe. Everything changes because we are interdependent and we influence each other, and things influence us as well. People, their thoughts, other things as well, lights. And this is something. There was something here that he says about how everything in the universe vibrates under the influence, because everything moves under the principles of interdependence and repercussion. and outlines our emotions. So we can in our lives stay still, remain stationary where we are, or we can move because we aim our thoughts in something we wanted to achieve, and we created the opportunities. I think, we really need to learn how to use our minds and how to use our thoughts, because André Luiz says in the domains of mediumship that a change of mind is a change of life. So sometimes we're going through a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulties. Things don't go the way we want, and we get frustrated and annoyed. And if we just stop, instead of being annoyed, spending all that energy in a negative way, just sit down and start seeing ourselves achieving something already, like already getting the award for what we're doing, even for ourselves. And I think that that's an important thing for us, because he says thought is an electric-magnetic force. Thought, electricity, and magnetism, they go together. And it's interesting that, and defines and creates affinity or dissolution, assimilation. So we are constantly, absolutely bombarded by thoughts that come from other people, by other things, but also people are receiving what we think as well. And it's interesting sometimes, if you are in a situation, in a meeting or in a party or something, and you see someone and suddenly you look at the person is looking at you, for whatever reason. So there is always that connection that sometimes we don't know. And I think also the power of constructing something with our thoughts. As an example, very brief, in one of André Luiz's books, he's talking, they are seeing this writer, and they have all these people surrounding him, around him, tempting him, doing all sorts of things. And he says, but they are so different. The spirits are very different, because he sees things from the spiritual world. And his tutor, I think it was Aulus, if I'm not mistaken, says to him, but those are not people. Those are not spirit. Those are his thoughts. So he created these thoughts in him. So these people now are controlling him. So it's very important to say that the thoughts, the creators, what he had created, his thoughts, were then now controlling him, obsessing him, which is something very almost difficult to understand, but it is something. And once we know that, we know how we need to really educate the way we think, because it creates ideas, the ideas creates actions, and actions, we go and do things either good or bad. So it's important for us. And I like to say a little bit as well about prayer, because we go again to the Gospel according to Spiritism, and it's chapter 27, ask and it shall be given you. And of course, it also comes from the Sermon on the Mount. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount, which is very interesting. Maybe you should go and read it again, because we're having it. And prayers is an act of evocation, that we think about someone, we send prayers to them. And sometimes you think, I pray for that person, I pray and pray, but I'm weak, they will never receive it, whatever. Sometimes we doubt ourselves, but that's not true. Whenever we pray with our hearts and we put a strength on that, they will receive it. They will receive whatever we are sending to them. So this is very important, because the thought will be, and the energy that they receive will be as strong as the energy that we're putting in our thoughts. So if we are really praying with a lot of faith that we want to help someone, and you send them a lot of loving energy for them to be healed, for them to be calm, for them to be in peace, or to give them courage, if we put a strong thought on it, that's as much they will receive. And this, I think, it's very, very important for us to discipline our thoughts in relation to ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, to always try to, whenever we have a negative thought coming through, just say, oh, let it pass, and think about a good one, something nice for ourselves, for other people, because we are creating an energy around us. Sometimes you have experience when something nice happen and you're walking in the street. I don't know if you ever had this experience, probably you did, everybody smiles at you and you don't know why. If you ever go, this experience everywhere, the bus drivers give you a smile, the people sitting in the bus, the people you walk in, they look at you and they smile. And, often think, why are they smiling at me for? But I think because sometimes you are having such a nice thought, or you're having such a nice energy because you think something good, or you're praying. Sometimes as you walk in the street, you pray, or you see something absolutely beautiful, and you're so grateful that you have eyes to see those things. And I think you're spreading out, you're sending out this joy. And people connect to it immediately, and they respond by smiling back or something, So I think it's very, very important for us to really discipline our thoughts, to change the bad ones into good ones, and to more and more create around us good energy and love, because people will be receiving it, and we ourselves. That's why they say, if you do a good deed, it'll come back to you. Because of course you're sending all this good energy and people are receiving it, and they will think about you because they'll receive it from you. They will send for you. And of course you come back because they are sending good energies as well. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I think it's an important point to think about thoughts and what we do with it. Thank you.
Yes, in certain way we have to balance, to find the balance between our heart and our reason. But thank you very much, my dear. And still staying in London, but now I go to central London. My dear Elsa, in these moments of difficulties, those who are close to us, they suffer a lot because sometimes we put our frustration to them. And those close to us, we can say the family. And certain way we choose the family we want to born. We have our connections with them. Saying that, what we need to do to have a harmonious relationship with our family, and use this relationship to help us, to put us forward.
So we have to remember that we have relationships within the world, physical world, and also we have relationships beyond this world, so in the spiritual world. In the world that we are now, we have our worldly family. We are raised by our father, mother in a good family, have a good attention. So everything was beautiful in our first infancy and adulthood and so on. Of course, we are able to raise our own family, marriage, a husband or a wife, raise children, if it's possible, in a good way, remembering things that we have in our infancy, the education that we received from our father and mother. But this doesn't mean that we will receive as our own children always good spirits that are very keen to be with us, etc., etc. Sometimes we receive spirits that are not keen to be with us. We have some discordance in the past lives, not the previous ones, but perhaps another ones, etc. And we agree as a husband and wife or as a couple to receive this child, to raise this child in order from the maternity, from the fatherhood, motherhood, to embrace this as our not only physical family, but raising for the spiritual family in the future. From the past, enemies will be our friends, our children, and our family from the future. But it's not easy like that, because sometimes you have two children, good ones, they are very well in the families, but you have one that sometimes you call the black sheep or different sheep, and this one raise a lot of problems in the family. Have the same education, same relationships, same love from the father and mother, but this spirit is really a hard one to educate. But doesn't matter. We have to carry on our duty as a family, as a parents, and raise this child to be a good adult in the future. But it's not easy, because if you don't have a dialogue with these children, with the youth people, if you only make them be more hard, for example, you have one bedroom, your child in the morning, organize the room, etc. And the other one, day and night, don't allow you to go there, and the bedroom is a mess. You only say, why do you do this? You have to do a better way. You don't dialogue. You only ask the child to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that, but without a dialogue, without a really good conversation. So the child sometimes make more difficult to understand what's going on within the family. And everything should be for the harmonization of the family with your parents, relatives, elderly people in the family, people with disabled people in the family. Everything you have to use comprehension, understanding, dialogue, show love, show interest, never judge, because when we are judging people, we are probably wrong. So be vigilant with our thoughts. Silvia talked beautifully about thoughts, that the power of our thoughts, the magnetic field that we are feeling with our thoughts, we can change mountains with our thoughts. Jesus said, you can change this mountain from here to there. The mountains of our problems, our sufferings, our pains, our everything. We can change the world, change ourselves inside our family first. But if every day we are caring, we are in harmonization, we are fighting, children are seeing what we are doing, we are lying, etc. How can this family be harmonized? But is the way that we are talking in the family, educating, relationship between couples, we are spreading our example for our children to be in the future. I was raised in a good family. I raised my children in a good way. They, for themselves, if they choose to do differently, at least I did my part. As a mother, father, I did my part. But it's up to us to change our way in our family, our way in our society, our way in the world. But we can contribute to good or bad accordingly our behavior. So it's up to us, our free will, we can use, our thoughts, we can use, our words, be careful what we say, we send, my messages, then WhatsApp, click, I don't like you, I want to divorce, blah, blah, blah. So you said things, you sent things, and it's difficult to rebuild peace in the family when you are have your reaction so quickly. Act before react. Act with love, understanding, dialogue. Silence sometimes is a good way to be in a better side is silence sometimes. And talk later on when the other one hold their thoughts, their minds. More or less like that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, my dear. Thank you. Probably a question here for Buzz. Silvia and Elsa, I live in London as well. Is there any way I can help or participate in a physical place?
Yes, you can send a message through our website or you can use our office arroba at
At
bus.org.uk. If you can type it there, Stevan, for me, office at bus.org.uk. Or can go to the website. You have a place to send a message there. I can send information to you.
done.
Thank you, Zé.
Okay, so it's time to wrap up, unfortunately, because the discussion here is amazing. Like Marisa is saying here, I wish the we have like automatic subtitles. So so I know Facebook they put subtitles, but after we finish. So thank you all for joining us here. Faye, Zé das Neves, Marisa, Luciano, Robbie Brown, Dani, Vini Bones, Leia, Bruno Mindanha. Let me see what's more. Yeah, I don't think I forget anybody. But before we leave, let's go very quickly here to the announcements. And next show on 8th of September, the topic is using hardships to build the future. Okay, so also we will have on the 3rd of October, 11 a.m. to 12:30, a wonderful talk given by Charles. And the topic is Allan Kardec, a pioneer of science and spirituality. So please save the date, 3rd of October, and will be transmitted by YouTube and Facebook from Buzz, Kardec Radio, and Art Spiritist Federation. Okay? So, this Saturday, 4 p.m., we will have Faye talking about Léon Denis. Yeah, can't wait to see it. So, please save the date and time this Saturday, 4 p.m. London time. Also, we will have in September, on the 11th of September, which is the following Saturday, we will have a conference on suicide prevention with Tani Stevanin, Mick Collins, Fernanda Perini, Marina Stiegel, and Peter Fenwick. So, Fenwick. Okay. Also, we do have our friends from Kardec Group. They do have lovely podcasts, and you can find these on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Deezer, and the topic is Insightly Speaking. So I will invite you to listen that. At the same time, the Kardec Group supports two entities in Brazil. One is Grupo Sheila in Salvador, and the second one is Instituto Mutirão in Curitiba. If you want to help, just go to www.kardec.org.uk/high5. Okay? And that's it. End of the announcements. So, thank you very much for your time. Charles, thank you. Merci.
Merci, Stevan. Thank you all.
Silvia, Elsa, thank you.
Night, bye.
I wish you all a good night, and I'll see you next
Ciao.
Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you. Bye.